Welcome to a late night foreigner in the Philippines. This is, I suppose, what I've come to regard as late night meanderings, and it's 10 after 10, so I'll try to keep an eye on the time and not keep you awake too much in case you are on the same time as me. Well, so I was thinking more about my musical career, which certainly had its moments, but mainly when I was in the army. The good thing about my tuition in the army, and they taught me that's where I learned to be a musician, and I learned obviously to read music. I learned about the theory of music, and I learned about a great number of things, and then I managed at one point, even though I didn't really have the requisite 3 years to serve, on returning from the Royal Military School of Music. Actually, I like to call it the Royal Military College of Music, but actually it was just a school. But we all like to pose a little bit, don't we? Anyway, the Royal Military School of Music at Twickenham, and I went there for a year, and that was the best. It was the best year of my life in many ways in the army, because all the rest really wasn't that good. So anyway, while I was there, I worked very, very hard on the trombone, and I practiced a great deal all day and then in the evening as well, and along with a few other really interested students. And surprisingly, not all students were very interested. I was very surprised at this, but we all had, depending on what instrument that you were on, in other words, in what instrument you played, you would have a different professor, and the professors were pretty awesome, because in my own professor I had Mr. Bill Teske, who I absolutely worshipped, and on really honoured days he would bring his trombone in and we would play duets together. You've no idea, that was the closest to heaven that a young man like me, who was learning to play, would get to play with a great player like Bill Teske. So Bill Teske was a very dry, laconic man, a man of few words. He didn't waffle on, but what he said made a great deal of it was very important. Well, anyway, as time went by, after maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 months there, and I was feeling very good about playing. I was coming on very fast. He was quietly complimentary about my playing, and when I used to find other trombone players who didn't give a crap about playing the trombone and were there just for an easy time, they wouldn't get an easy time from Mr. Teske, and they would do anything to get out of a lesson. Well, I used to go to them and say, "Do you think I could have your lesson?" And then I would go in, and I'm very happy to say, and I'm honoured to say, that he was always glad to see me turn up instead of this, some other guy who didn't give a damn about music and was a bumbling idiot on the trombone and was only there because the army won't sack anybody. Will they? Of course. Well, I wish they'd have sacked me. Well, anyway, I would go in and I would have tried to do more than he asked me to do, and that was why I won his respect. Well, one particular day I'd been listening to Spike, let me see, was it Spike Milligan? Spike, am I getting the right, well, it was, let me see, my memory fails me, sorry, but there was an American band, and they used to do all the crazy stuff, and they would be very funny. But I listened to the band once on radio, and to my amazement and a mixture of amazement and horror, I heard a trombone player play The Flight of the Bumblebee. So I'm listening, my jaw is dropped, and he's going. I thought, oh my God, this is too hard for me, you know. And then I got a bit cocky again. I thought, well, no, I'm a talented player. I'll just learn how to play that. So I went out and I bought the music, and I took the music in there, and I said, Mr. Teske, I've got here the music for The Flight of the Bumblebee. So what I think, if you could teach me how to play The Flight of the Bumblebee, boy, I would be a great player, because I heard it played on the radio. So Mr. Teske never actually looked at me when he was giving me a lesson. He would sit in a chair by the window, and he would lean on the window ledge, and he would lean like this, and he'd look out at the at whatever was happening outside the window, but he listened very keenly. Mr. Teske had perfect pitch, right? And perfect pitch is literally, you know exactly what key anything is being played in. And if you have a situation, which you often have on radio, or used to have, and that is that the turntable of, I got a cat here again, the turntable of the DJ might be too slow. Now if it's too slow, it will be running flat, so it will be a B2 flat. If it's running too fast, it will be a B sharp flat, if you're with me. So one is a little below and one is a little above, and if you've got perfect pitch, this is an absolute nightmare. Now I don't have perfect pitch, I have very good relative pitch. In other words, once I'm given a note, then I know exactly whether things are in tune or out of tune, even though my singing often may not reflect that. I'm admitting it here. So he would look out like this, and he'd look out the window, and when I made my proclamation, so Mr. Teske, all you have to do is teach me to play Flight of the Bumblebee, and I'll be a great player. So here is the pupil teaching the teacher. He heaved a sigh of relief. Not relief, he heaved a sigh. He said, listen very carefully to me, son. If you take the instrument out of its case, and you do not practice exactly what I give you, you are wasting your time, and more importantly, you're wasting mine. And he got the Jekyll and Hyde eye, like that. Do you remember Jekyll and Hyde? I remember Jekyll and Hyde. Spencer Tracy. He could do Mr. Hyde just by doing this with his eyebrow. And that was Mr. Hyde. He didn't do anything else, but he did the eye, and that was Mr. Hyde. Well, Mr. Teske did a Mr. Hyde. I dropped the idea of asking him any more about Flight of the Bumblebee, and happily it was never mentioned again, and it didn't affect the friendship. Or, well, I can't aspire to say that he was a friend. He was my teacher, and he gave me a hard time, which actually, when I spoke to some of the other guys who were too stupid to understand the value of the lessons that they were being given, they would tell me, "Hey, he never gives me a hard time. He always just lets me play, and I haven't done any of the practice that he gave me, and he doesn't say anything. He just sits there and goes like that." And those were the ones that I went back to and said, would you like to give me your lesson? See? So he never gave me that eye again. And I loved the man. He was the principal trombonist of the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and he used to get me free tickets to go to let me see where the place was, Maida Vale. I used to go to the BBC studios in Maida Vale, where they were putting on concerts with the BBC Symphony, and I would go there and I would see the orchestra playing, which at that time was, as I say, as close to heaven as you could possibly get. I would sit there enthralled. Sometimes the music was a little heavy for me and I would fall asleep. I never told him that, of course, but maybe he saw me. Maybe he said, "Flannery, you fell asleep." No, he never said that. That was just when I fell asleep, I woke up when I suddenly saw his eye. His eye was on me. And so I tried very hard never to fall asleep, but if I did, I sometimes thought of that, you remember the Laurel and Hardy? Laurel and Hardy, Stan Laurel, when he was asked to stay awake and he couldn't, so he painted an eye on the eyelid, and he painted the open eye, and then he was able to close both his eyes, and he looked at first glance as if he was wide awake. And of course, Ollie soon got him on that one, of course. So that was a brief, probably not brief enough, look at my time at the Royal College, Military College of Music, the Military School of Music in Twickenham, right? And that was the most rewarding, the most productive time of my entire life in the military. But then after that I was shipped off to Africa, and I went to Africa, which at first seemed to be a very exciting thing. I was going to Kenya. Now that was when it was called Kenya in those days. Now the Americans have got hold of Kenya and they've changed it to Kenya. Why? Why didn't they leave it alone? So I went to Kenya, but that's, I should let you go right now, and we'll talk about this again. Okay? Thanks for looking in. This is A Foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.